Hi, this is Gene from Listening in Radio KB9001 MWDX, KB9001 SWL, and of course my ham radio call sign WN9ZWC. I generally try to keep my videos kind of short and sweet to keep people interested. I post a lot of shorts, and I tend to stay away from like long news items, but I just wanted to jump up here and address some things. I've been in the radio hobby kind of in earnest since the year 2000. So about 25 years I've been involved. But before that, I started in citizens band like a lot of ham radio operators did back in the 70s, and I became very interested in scanner listening. I had several different scanners back in the day and used to listen to public safety, and I was a huge fan of Radio Shack and bought a lot of their radio equipment. And I always wanted to be a ham radio operator, so in 2000 I got my tech license and eventually upgraded to general. But when that door opened up, the door to shortwave listening, HF communications, became part of what I did. Medium wave, DXing, all these different things I learned about radio. And I used to work a lot of night shifts by myself, and I would listen to AM radio. So getting into medium wave DXing was kind of a natural thing for me. I would sit in my car on midnights, and I would sit there and I would write down different radio stations that I heard across the nation in the middle of the night or 3 a.m. It was a lot of fun, and I still like to do it. But I'm here to talk a little bit about what's going on with the Voice of America, with VOA. Over the last couple of weeks, it's come out that VOA is being either defunded or disbanded or whatever, shut down, because there's a lot going on in the government right now, and they're doing a lot of things to perhaps shut down improper funds that are being distributed. I don't know the whole picture, and I don't want to get into that part of it here. I just want to figure out what happened with VOA and which way things are going to be going. So just to give you a little bit of history about VOA, and I have a feeling that a lot of people don't know anything about VOA, and they didn't know anything about VOA before the news stories came out that VOA was being shut down by the Trump administration. But most people don't have ham radio licenses. Most people don't have shortwave radios, especially today. The radio medium is taking a turn in a different direction, and people use their cell phones for their entertainment, for their information, for their phone calls. So that's really where everything has gone to, and we just have to come to terms with that and admit that that's true. Now, on the Listening and YouTube channel, I get hundreds of thousands of visitors because I can see the hits, because I can go into the studio portion of my channel, look and see how many hits I'm getting, and I get quite a few. I have quite a few people who come in and look at my shorts. Some of my shorts that I put up, some of them have over 10,000 views on them. So I get a lot of traffic. But with that said, I really only have under 800 subscribers to my channel. And it's understandable because it's a niche hobby, and not many people are radiophiles like we are, and the people who visit this page. They just, it's just not their thing. So it's a very, very small segment of society. So I think that most people didn't hear about VOA. They don't know who VOA is. They don't know what shortwave is. They're clueless. They have literally no idea. But I just want to give you a little bit of background on VOA before I continue on. Voice of America started around 1942 during the Second World War, and it was put out there to counteract the radio traffic coming from the Axis forces and to broadcast, American ideology to Europe. So the people who were in the situation could hear that America was out there. We were paying attention. Of course, the medium back then was radio, and shortwave radio was exclusively used. Look up the British Broadcasting Company and look up BBC and see what they did over the years. But the part of VOA that I recall the best is what their role during the Cold War, what they did during the Cold War. And what they did during the Cold War was to broadcast radio signals into the Iron Curtain, across the Iron Curtain, because Germany had become split up, and then the Berlin Wall came up, and boom, we had a Cold War going with the former Soviet Union, and information flow was cut off to that segment of the world, and VOA played a very vital role in broadcasting music, broadcasting our way of life, our ideology across the Iron Curtain. So it served a very practical and purposeful mission to accomplish that. So when I heard about VOA being defunded, disbanded, whatever the plan here is, I started doing some research. I actually sent an email to VOA asking them, and I told them, hey, I have a YouTube channel. I'd like to know what's going on. with VOA. Can you give me any information? I got no response. There's also a radio show that broadcasts, I believe it's on WRMI. I'm about 99.99% sure it's WRMI, called Wave Scan, and they did post something on Facebook saying that there was a lot of confusion at VOA right now. So I tried to reach out to them. I did not get a reply from Wave Scan, so here I am. I'm just going to put my own thing out. So today I searched all the frequencies where VOA was supposed to be, and they're not there. I looked online and I checked their website and I looked at their streaming app. They are not streaming anything at this point in time. So I started searching news stories, and of course all the news stories said, and there was some video put out by different mainstream media news sources and doing some interviews indicating that yes, VOA is currently being shut down. And by my investigation so far, that's exactly what I'm seeing at this point too. So it also became apparent, and I did not know this. I'll check this off my list here. I did not know this, but apparently Carrie Lake was made the head of VOA shortly before this happened. I'm not sure what to think about Carrie Lake, and I'm certainly not trying to throw her under the bus, but I think that there's some confusion on her part. I have to tell you this. A couple of months back, maybe it was 3 months ago. Time flies. I want to say 2 to 3 months ago, Carrie Lake was supposed to come to Central Iowa, and they were going to talk to some political groups here. She was going to talk to some political groups here, and there was some confusion, and people were asking, "Well, why is Carrie Lake coming here? What does she want?" Because there was all this speculation: was she going to run for the governor of Iowa? Was she going to run for office here? Was she coming back from Arizona because she was obviously both a news person and a politician in Arizona, and maybe because she was a news person, the current administration thought that she would be a good fit for VOA. It doesn't look that way, but anyhow, the confusion that it created here was kind of strange. And then suddenly, nobody could answer any questions, and then Carrie Lake just disappeared and said she wasn't going to be talking here. She canceled everything, which was really, really odd. It's just a weird situation. So that's the front on Carrie Lake. As far as I know, I don't have any other information. I'm just telling you my experiences. Now with this administration, I'm just gonna call it out. And those of us who listen to shortwave and go talk to anybody who's a shortwave contester, listening on the listening side, and they'll tell you that here in the United States, we only have just a small handful of shortwave radio stations. I mean, really small. We have WWCR, we have WRNI, we have WRNO, I believe, and some other ones, and they don't broadcast 24 hours a day. There's some independents out there that are doing their thing. WRMI is the biggest and most prolific shortwave radio station that we still have. Of course, I have to mention WBCQ. I almost forgot about that because WBCQ is one of my favorite stations. So kudos to WBCQ. And they were always broadcasting thoughtful, rhetorical content for people to listen to, to jog some things loose in people's heads, and gave them an alternative news media to listen to. And I appreciated some of the things that WBCQ tried to do. So they're another one. But where that said, and at this point, other countries, and I'm just going to name the big one, China, and I've said this before on listening in radio, China has the most radio stations. And by the way, China is the biggest producer of shortwave radios. And you can go look at, go to shortwaveinfo.com and go start skimming through the different frequencies and look at the different times. And you're always going to see a huge number of radio stations in the area of Asia, through China, through the South China Sea. And you're going to see a lot of them. There's a lot of them there. And it's with that in mind, I think we have to understand that perhaps shutting down VOA, and it could be they want to shift gears because, after all, look at BBC went off, all the foreign stations went off, Radio Netherlands went off, right? All the German shortwave stations went off, and they went to the internet and they broadcast on the internet and they streamed on the internet like so many services are doing. Everybody went digital. In fact, people who've been at radio for the last 25 years will tell you that there was a big push to make both AM radio in the United States and shortwave digital, and that's the course that they were going to go in. But perhaps streaming took over that function. Maybe that's where we're at. But in the meantime, we have a lot of people out there all over the world who still have shortwave radios who might not be getting any internet, and maybe they will in the future, and maybe that's the way of the future. Not to quote the Howard Hughes movie or anything, the way of the future. It's the way of the future. We'll have to see how that pans out. But anyhow, I just feel that at this point that the current administration, and I certainly want to back them up, but we've got to be honest, and we have to be out in the open in criticism of both sides. Doesn't matter, and they say that VOA was kind of leaning to the left. And I know, I listened to VOA. They did lean a little bit to the left, and they talked about climate change and other things. And I know there's disagreements. We got plenty of disagreements. We got disagreements to go around all day long about the way we look at things and people's different arguments, which they take on the social media and such things. But the bottom line is, we're giving up that airspace to be filled by who? To be filled by China, or to be filled by other nations who are not friendly. I don't know. I'm not sure what to think about this decision, but I want to say, if anybody in the Trump administration sees my video, I just think it was a poor idea, and I have to take issue with it. And I think that if it's not replaced with something needs to replace that, and maybe we need to know what the plan for that is. I mean, maybe. They don't tell us a lot of things, but that's kind of where we're at. But anyhow, I don't want to take up any more of your time. That was just a thought process, and I wanted to let my listeners know, because this is radio related, and it's related to shortwave listening, and it's one of those stations that one of us shortwave listeners log in a contest. We're logging our log that we hear, and we look for that stuff when other people don't. So will the general public miss VOA? No, they probably don't know much about it. Will we miss VOA? Yeah, the radio listeners and shortwave listeners in the world are going to miss VOA, because VOA is just one of those radio stations that becomes part of who we are and part of what we do. And, I'm hoping that maybe stations like particularly WRMI, that has the equipment, the facilities, and the antenna farm to become the next voice, and maybe it could be privatized, and some other listeners out there and people who do things like me with my channel can pipe up and do some shows for them, and maybe put some support behind them to keep the voice out there. But again, that's food for thought. Okay, this is Gene from Listening and Radio. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Hope I didn't bore you to death. Take care.